three men contesting the presidential election. The first one will be very familiar to anyone who's spent any time at all paying attention to Indonesian politics over the past 15 years. Prabowo Subianto. He is in his fourth straight election. He ran for vice president in 2009. He contested the last two elections going for the top job, and he lost all of them. He has never won. He's 72 now. He survived a mild stroke, but it did affect his health a little bit. Yet despite all that, he is persistent. He's now running again, and this time he's an almost certain bet to win the election on February 14. And it's partly because with his incredibly controversial past, many of the first-time voters and young voters who are under sort of 30 or maybe 35, they don't really have a great deal of, memory or understanding about the controversies that have long dogged Prabowo, such as his time in the military, where he is accused of human rights abuses in East Timor, accused of abuses in Papua, but probably most infamous, he's accused of being involved in the kidnapping of 22 pro-democracy activists in the late 1990s as the Suharto regime was crumbling. Of those 22, 13 were never found and they're presumed dead. So despite that, all these years later, Prabowo Subianto is the front runner to win. And the other reason he is now suddenly a lot more popular is because he's chosen as his vice presidential running mate the son of the current president, Joko Widodo. His son's name is Gibran Rakabuming Raka. And because the outgoing president, Joko Widodo, is still really popular after 10 years in office, he's able to transfer that popularity to his son. Many of the supporters of Joko Widodo, who just really are loyal to him, they're going to vote for Prabowo because they're happy to see that the president, the outgoing president's legacy, will continue on through his flesh and blood as the VP. Just quickly, Bev, the other two candidates, Ganjar Pranowo, the Silver Fox, he is running as well as Anies Baswedan. Ganjar is a governor in Central Java. Anies Baswedan used to be the governor of Jakarta, but the reason I'm not spending a great deal of time talking about them is both of them are well back in the polls, and no one is expecting that either of them have a chance of beating Prabowo on February 14.
Yeah, and it's a surprise, of course, that Jokowi has given his imprimatur to Prabowo. As you point out, his son is on the ticket. Despite the odds, he's too young to necessarily be there, but he got on the ticket. How much of a factor is he playing in with the younger voters, as you point out, who don't have a lot of memory of elections gone by and potentially, some of what has happened?
Well, I don't even know if Gibran is the key guy helping to win the younger vote. That's certainly the hope of Prabowo, but going to some of these Prabowo rallies where both him and Gibran Rakabuming Raka are present, you speak to people who are sort of, in their 30s or their 40s, and they just go, I love Jokowi, I love Joko Widodo, I really love him. That's why I'm voting for Prabowo, because of his son Gibran. It's all because of Jokowi. I will follow Jokowi whatever he wants, and very obviously Jokowi is endorsing Prabowo because he's given his son to him, basically. So for this reason, I'm not so sure if the Gibran factor is pulling in young voters, or if it's kind of pulling in voters generally across all age brackets who think that Joko Widodo has done a good job over the past decade. But certainly young voters under 40 are the majority bloc, particularly under 30. There is a huge surge of young voters for this election, and all the candidates are trying to court them. Ganjar Pranowo and his running mate Mahfoud MD, they turn up to all the debates wearing these sort of silly bomber jackets with cutesy little logos and stuff all over them. Doesn't seem to be working. Anies Baswedan, he's done a lot of sort of K-pop style campaigning with some of his live videos. Some of his fans have given him a K-pop nickname. You can see what they're trying to do, but the gimmicks don't seem to really be luring those younger voters over. One gimmick, though, that may be working is that Prabowo and Gibran have had a makeover, and although Prabowo is a sort of hard former military man accused of human rights abuses, this time around they've kind of done him up in this cutesy aesthetic called Gemoy, where he's kind of cartoonish, portrayed as cartoonish and cute and pudgy, and these weird posters are all over the cities in Indonesia showing this 72-year-old man with allegedly a very dark past being portrayed as this sort of cuddly, almost like a little boy. It's weird, Bev, but as the polls show, seems to be working.
Seems to be working. So when you talk about issues of concern for people going into an election, it seems, as you're pointing out, that people have been very happy with the job Jokowi has done. So, are there issues that they feel should be done differently? Are there going to be any problems that this new ticket could run into?
Yeah, that's what makes this election, I have to say, a little bit underwhelming, because Prabowo's whole campaigning ethos is continuity. I'm just going to keep doing what Joko Widodo has done for the past decade. Look, I've got his son on my ticket. There's your guarantee that if you like the direction Indonesia's going in, you're going to get more of it under my leadership. That is the Prabowo pitch. So specifically, he's talking about, he makes all these promises about no kid is going to grow up malnourished, and we're going to have free food programs for the poor, and we're going to train more science graduates and all this sort of stuff. But the overall message is, if you like the way things are going, I'm the candidate who's going to keep it going in that way. So it's put Ganjar in a really tough position because, he is the same party as the sitting president, but he clearly isn't being endorsed by him. The only candidate who is sort of saying he's going to shake things up is Anies Baswedan. He's been quite critical of the direction of Jokowi's Indonesia. One of the big things he says he will review is the new capital city. That's a very expensive project being built in East Kalimantan. But as I said, Prabowo is likely to win, and because of this, you shouldn't expect much in the way of substantial change. The critics, though, they say, Bev, that democracy in Indonesia has been kind of slowly going down the gurgler for the past 10 years under Joko Widodo. And given that Prabowo Subianto, when he lost the last election, he wouldn't accept the results, his supporters rioted on the streets, he doesn't have a very strong track record of being a bloke who's super committed to democracy. And so this, too, has been raised as a concern. What will he do if he is elected?
Good to talk, Bill. Thanks so much.
Thanks.